welcome to Hilltop. My name is Dave Lossiter, and I'm the principal here, and we are absolutely delighted to have all these awesome guests here to share the wonderful work that's being done here at Hilltop. Governor Walz in the other room talked about the optimism and the work that we're doing for children, putting kids first, and hopefully you got a chance to see all the different moving parts in our school that makes that happen. And specifically here at Hilltop, supporting families and children all the way, starting at birth, all the way until we see them off into middle school so that they get exactly what they need to be successful. I could not be more proud of the staff that I showed to you today. They have worked so hard through the pandemic, and they are innovating and inspiring in so many different ways, and just so grateful to showcase the work at Hilltop to you. Without any further, I'll hand it over to the governor, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Principal. Well, thank you, Principal Lossiter, and again, a huge congratulations on the birth of the baby daughter to you and your wife. Congratulations. So 2 weeks ago, and he's here working, kind of the way educators function. So good morning, everyone, and welcome. I want to start out first and foremost by thanking our students, thanking their families, thanking the administrators, the educators, the support staff, and everyone who's involved in making sure that every child in Minnesota gets the best possible opportunity to thrive. And after several years of really, really hard changes, especially as we saw it with our children in schools and activities and social emotional learning opportunities, but to watch the care and the innovation and the things that were done to ensure the classrooms we were just in were full of smiles, energetic, just hopeful children looking at what their future could be, so inquisitive, so curious, and in there with their families and support staff and new ways of doing things, being connected to resources in their community. For those of you, and I think there's probably, I could count on a handful of folks who aren't tired, frustrated, fatigued, and ready for something else because of what's COVID done, spend a couple minutes in a school like Hilltop. Your sense of what the future can be, your sense of optimism will be soaring by the time you're done, and that does not come without planning. Principal Bernardson, Superintendent, thank you. When we see holistic approaches, when we see innovative ways, you heard about the ESSER funds that were here, how those were going to be used were coming out of educational leaders who said these are things that we can do for our community. And the end result of all of this is an opportunity for a child to be in a safe, loving, nurturing environment where their future is boundless. And that translates into a state that is a great place to live, a great place to do business, and that is deliberate because of the conscious efforts and thoughts that were made here. So I'm here first and foremost, as I said to the Lieutenant Governor, if you want your spirits to be lifted, a place like Hilltop is where you could be. Make the time, ask folks. If you're wondering what's happening, we see this, people are curious. I'm glad people are being engaged with their schools. I'm glad people are showing up and wondering what's happening there. Go in and watch what the professionals are doing, because I guarantee you, you will leave in awe and with spirits lifted. With that being said, we're here today to continue on to talk about what Minnesota can do, what the state of Minnesota can do, and what our partners can do collectively to make sure that families are thriving, that make sure that pre-K and childcare opportunities are affordable for all Minnesotans. Making sure, as you see up here, that we're focusing on those families and their schools, that this school has the resources and the ability to innovate and do the things they do, because the return on the dollar, we've all seen the numbers on that. Early childhood returns us 12 to 1 on the investments we make, maybe even more so now because of the focus of what we've seen during COVID. And then making sure families are served, to watch those families be in there with their little ones, to play from 7 months on up, working in conjunction with the school in a safe place. That is an opportunity that everyone needs. And the one thing is, families shouldn't have to choose with being home with a sick child or being able to be there on leave after the birth of their child to spend those incredible first weeks and months of bonding together. So we've got proposals in here to address this, like paid family leave. We know that employers, this is an incredible tool to recruit and retain employees, to know that when the time comes and you need this, and God forbid you have a bout of something where you're in the hospital, that you're not choosing between keeping your home, paying your bills, or being able to go back to that job that you had. So we're here today to unveil this, and we've got some commissioners. You're going to hear some of the details for this. But once again, as we talk about a budget surplus, that's a fiscal side of the document. The moral side of the document is, what kind of state do we want to have? We already unveiled last week, we're a state that pays our bills. We get our unemployment system back to there. It's a safety net for folks. We make sure that we're paying the frontline workers and the heroes who were on the front lines during COVID to get them that. We're making sure every Minnesotan gets extra money in their pocket to pay for the increases we've seen because of global supply chain issues. Make gas a little cheaper, buy more diapers, buy formula, the things that people need to do, and then reducing the cost, especially for those families that have children, and then leaning into long-term reductions, thousands of dollars in reductions of the opportunity to get high-quality child care, just like you saw down there. Every family deserves that opportunity. And it's not just this administration saying that. It's not just child advocates saying that. It's the state's businesses saying that if Minnesota wants to stay competitive, we need to continue to nurture, build out, and reimagine what early childhood looks like, what child care looks like, what pre-K looks like, and what our schools are doing. They're asking us to do that because they know our future depends upon it. This is an incredible opportunity to lean into things that are almost universally wanted across Minnesota in a fiscally responsible manner. And the result you get is a Hilltop Elementary and all of the partners that are involved with that. And the end result is smiling, happy, learning children down there. That's what this budget will do. With that, I will turn it to our smiling, happy child advocate, the Lieutenant Governor. So.
Thank you. I know that you probably can't see my face under this mask, but I do indeed have quite a smize on my face today. This feels like a really important moment in Minnesota, and I am incredibly proud of what we've been able to put here in front of folks together. So it's my great honor to be the Lieutenant Governor of Minnesota, but it also is my great honor to be the mom of a newly turned 9-year-old little girl. And I've seen firsthand how kids and how families have endured losses big and small over the course of the last 2 years. And these losses came on top of an already existing childcare crisis, opportunity gaps for Black, Indigenous, students of color, and limited safety nets for family caregivers. And I've shared often, but it bears repeating, that I come from a family that relied on SNAP, that used the Child Care Assistance Program coming up, and Section 8 housing voucher to make ends meet when I was a kid. I was a kid with a different colored lunch ticket and qualified for free and reduced price lunch. And there are a lot of kids like me in this school and across the state who deserve investment. I carry that experience with me in every conversation we have and every decision we make. Right now, families across the state are struggling, and some have been struggling for a very long time. We have an opportunity, but we also have an obligation to take action on their behalf. We know that when we work towards building the best state in the country to raise a family, we are building a better state for all people in Minnesota. We've included significant steps towards this vision in 2021, including a historic cost of living adjustment for families who use MFIP, free college for eligible youth emerging from foster care, changes to our unemployment insurance law so that high school students who lose their jobs can access unemployment insurance, and reforms to the juvenile justice system to help youth and eliminate racial disparities. And we plan to keep moving Minnesota forward with our plan to support children and families. So we are making history in Minnesota with a nearly $1.8 billion in a mixed delivery child care and early education system that will lead to increased access for affordable quality slots for Minnesota families through increased pre-K, Head Start, child care businesses, and child care assistance and early learning scholarships. So these investments mean that the budget forecast adjusts the child care assistance basic sliding fee, which will add another 16,000 families or 32,000 families to be served by this program, virtually eliminating the waiting list. That's my favorite part. Adding an additional more than 6,000 pre-K slots in school-based, licensed family and center-based and Head Start settings to serve more than 23,000 children with more time spent in an early learning environment. And we heard here today why that is so incredibly important. Nearly tripling the amount invested annually in the direct early learning scholarships, adding an estimated 10,000 additional children per year. Raising childcare assistance payment rates to the 75th percentile, increasing funding to nearly 3,800 currently registered for CCAP. Providing financial hardship grants, technology supports, and navigation supports for existing and new child care providers. And as the governor and I talk about a lot, we know that children do not come in pieces, which is why we are also investing in a student mental health and free meals for all students at participating public schools for breakfast and lunch. We're also investing in resources so that English language learners and their families can thrive in our schools and communities. We're increasing support for college-bound and currently enrolled college students through waived application fees and increased emergency funding to meet basic needs. And for those of you who joined us on Thursday, you heard from a remarkable student, Elena. Elena, who's a single mom who went back to school through the Minnesota Reconnect program. And we are helping students like Elena. We are establishing the Student Parent Center Grant Program for students just like her, current and expecting parents pursuing their post-secondary goals. We're also increasing food security across Minnesota with funding support for food shelves and food banks, and meal programs and emergency food proposal to strengthen food security in American Indian communities. And we are fighting for paid family and medical leave and sick and safe leave because it is unacceptable for any Minnesota worker to choose between their health and their family and their financial security. So we need to get it done. It brings me a tremendous amount of joy to talk to you about these proposals. And as we are in this setting, as we are in this space, as we are with children learning about Arctic wolves and polar bears and seals, their future is limitless if only we act to support them. So thank you so much. And one of our champions who has been just doing such an incredible amount for our children is our wonderful Commissioner Mueller. Commissioner.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Flanagan and Governor Walz, and thank you all for allowing us to be here today. Superintendent Bernardson and Principal Lefsetter, we really appreciate you letting us all walk through and have the opportunity to see your students, interact with your staff. We know that oftentimes we can be really big disruptions, and your kids were focused and they were learning at high levels, and we are just deeply grateful. So thank you so much for allowing us to come in today. I'm really excited and honored to be here to talk a little bit more about the governor and lieutenant governor's budget and looking at what we are going to be able to do for our children. What you may not have been able to see is as everyone is wearing masks, you may not see the smiles, but I can tell you that there are fist bumps. There are people who are incredibly excited because not only do you see, like what the governor has talked about, is that we've been able to not only say what's important and identify those values, but they are also putting their funding with those actions behind them, and it reflects what they value as leaders and what we are going to be able to do for our students and for our staff. We know that this budget then addresses a number of areas of need that have consistently heard from our school communities in areas of mental health, academic and social emotional support, high quality early childhood options beginning at birth, out of school time programs, and food access, as well as a number of other areas that are incredibly important for our students. One of the best ways that we can support our schools in meeting students' needs is by investing in the general education formula. This budget includes a 2% increase on the general education formula to help stabilize our funding, and it also reduces the special education and English learner cross subsidies back to the 2019 levels. These are the most flexible funds that these schools receive. providing school districts and charter schools with decision-making power to meet the unique needs of each and every student. And this budget is incredibly unique, and you can see the leadership and the background of the governor and lieutenant governor and their work in schools, because they have found the delicate balance by not only being able to identify how it is we can have flexible funding, but how it is we can also have programs that are evidence-based and geared towards students to make sure that we are closing the achievement gap, the access gap, and the opportunity gap. So it makes significant investment, as you said, in early childhood over the next 3 years. It ensures that Minnesota students can access early care and education programming. It ensures that Minnesota families have the resources and support they need before their kids arrive to kindergarten. We know that if we have the opportunity for our students to have early access, it means that we are prepping them for what they need to be able to do when they get into school. And every single student deserves that. And our governor and lieutenant governor are ensuring that we have that possibility. The education package also includes, the education package also includes a more than $180 million investment in our educators, including the support of our workforce right now and longer-term investments. We know that over the last 3 years, 3 school years, our staff, our educators in the classroom, our educators who are paraprofessionals, our school bus drivers, our food service, all people who interact with students every single day have done things that they've never expected to do, supporting families in ways they never know that they needed to do, while also maintaining that for themselves. And so we are thrilled to be able to not only recognize what we need to be able to do to build and retain this profession, but also how do we keep the people who are amazing and remarkable and the experts in their field in this profession today. So as we think about that workforce, we also know that we have Paraprofessional Week. We want to make sure that we also acknowledge all of our paraprofessionals. And so thank you. We just deeply appreciate all the work that you've done. So in addition to bolstering our workforce, the budget includes nearly $630 million in academic and wraparound supports for students over the next 3 years. For example, the budget invests an annual allocation of $5 million to effectively implement Minnesota Bold, which is a birth through grade 12 action plan for literacy achievement to boost reading proficiency statewide, and $47.3 million for culturally and linguistically appropriate youth development, employment, and training opportunities. Additionally, Minnesota students were asking us to prioritize mental health. It is the one thing that our students have said consistently, not for years. They have been saying this for a very long time. They've not only talked about it for themselves, but for their peers, but they are saying it more succinctly and more clearly now than ever before. So as we are thinking about that, we know that it is urgent, which is why the budget includes $212 million in mental health supports, such as increased funding for student support personnel in schools, school-linked behavioral health grants to support students and staff, and mental health services beginning in early childhood. We also know, We also know just how critical access to nutritious meals is when it comes to students' physical well-being and their learning, so that is why this budget includes free school breakfast and lunch for our Minnesota students. Finally, the budget invests $5 million per year to expand and sustain Minnesota's full-service community schools grant program, which has shown positive outcomes in areas such as graduation, student achievement, student attendance, and behavior. And these are just a few of the highlights of what you're going to be able to see when you have the opportunity to dig deeply into this. Once again, I'd like to thank the Hilltop team and for allowing us to come in, and I'm going to hand it over to Executive Director Erin Bailey.
Good morning, everyone. I have the privilege of serving as Executive Director of the Governor's Children's Cabinet, and our charge is simple: to center children in the way that state government works. And that is exactly what this budget does. It builds on thousands of conversations, decades of work in partnership with families, educators, childcare providers, schools, youth programs, and frankly, young people and families and parents themselves. Children unite us. They're our future, and our overall well-being and economic competitiveness as a state depends on their success. Today, race, zip code, income are too often determinants of that opportunity. Our systems have not led to that equitable outcome that we're looking for, and we have opportunities to improve that service delivery. That is what this budget does. And I'm grateful for the many commissioners and state agency leaders who have worked to center not their work, but children in the decisions and priorities that they're moving forward. and to the governor and lieutenant governor. As you've heard, this budget makes incredible investments in what we're hearing as priorities: childcare, schools, mental health, pre-K, paid family leave, healthcare. I want to just touch on a few gems that weren't covered in the budget today. Proposals around economic security and community supports for families. Coordination of services, we continue to hear this. There should be no wrong door for a family, for a parent who needs support. And to prioritize older youth with juvenile justice programs, a robust out-of-school time program that Commissioner Mueller touched on, and investments in higher education. Additionally, intergenerational investments, a few that are personally my favorite and embody a whole family approach. Supporting parents as students in our higher education. Family home visiting for each and every Minnesota child that's born here. Advancing equity and community-driven solutions, a sustainable expansion of our Community Solutions Fund, which has been built on those partnerships with programs on the ground. A Healthy Beginnings package to support navigation for families, especially lower income families, communities of color, and families experiencing special needs. Commissioner Mueller talked about the literacy package. This includes a partnership with educators and healthcare providers in Reach Out and Read that has long been supported in the community. And the budget moves towards covering all kids in healthcare, providing 12-month continuous medical assistance coverage for children up to the age of 21. This $5.1 billion package for children and families provides an opportunity for the state to enact its priorities for children and families. And advocates and parents and kids, as have been said today, have long been asking for this. As a parent of 2 young children, I want to personally thank the caregivers and families, the educators who've shared their work, their needs, their priorities with us to build this budget. I'll take 1 second and thank Miss Mercedes and Miss Vicky, who are with my 4-year-old in a child care program today. They have been heroes on the front lines throughout this pandemic, and I am enormously grateful for them. I want to thank Holly and the Head Start staff here and the licensed child care program. You're an example of the mixed delivery and $2.6 billion early childhood investment that we're putting forward in this budget. Thank you for your work. And again, this is a historic package. I couldn't be prouder to be here and thank the governor and lieutenant governor for their work and what we're putting forward today. I'll turn it back to you, Governor.
Well, I think I feel like Lieutenant Governor does. We're excited. And to all of the educators and the families, we know that old adage, why you go into this and the care you show, and it is truly servant leadership. And we also know that old saying, it is far better to light a candle than to curse the darkness. You've kept the candle burning for 2 years. We're here with thousands more candles to light that darkness. We're here to make sure that what we've learned in this goes forward. And I just told the Lieutenant Governor, standing here, somewhat emotionally about this, I said, this is why I ran for governor. To be honest with you, I did not plan on being a public health expert. But as teachers know, your day doesn't go as you always plan it. You wear a lot of hats. So from that first day when I walked in the 4th grade classroom at Wolf Creek Elementary on Pine Ridge, to when I left Mankato West High School as 11th grade geography teacher to ask the people of Minnesota and southern Minnesota to give me an opportunity to serve an elected office, it was that teaching and those children that drove us. It is why we centered and why we talk about Minnesota needs to be the best state in the country for families to raise their children. And we believe this budget does that. I would make sure that all Minnesotans know this. Everything you're seeing proposed, including the money back in your pocket and the hero pay and paying our bills and having the strongest financial balanced budget in the state, is all being done without raising one single tax. In fact, we're cutting them for the middle class, especially for families. This is the opportunity that sits in front of us. The naysayers who will tell us we can't do this, we cannot afford to not make this investment. We cannot afford at this point in time to not do the things that are being proposed here. We look forward to working with the legislature to strengthen these things, get these done, and give Minnesotans that hope that will come with this spring, with a retreat as we hope will happen with COVID, and a building up of the things we learned. That's the future our kids want to see. That's the joy that we can have. With that, we'll take any questions.
Governor, can you expand more on the paid family leave and sick leave? How many weeks are you looking at, and are they running concurrently?
We may have Anna Mingy's here with our detailed budget policy person and the proposals. Anna, if you could tell them what we funded in here and what the money we're putting in looks like. Just so many of you know, many of folks have this opportunity, especially in our largest employers. It's a lot of our small businesses of folks that don't have this ability for the paid family leave. They're looking for. We'll get you the details on it.
Okay, and then just one follow-up then to that. Has anything changed about the idea for how ongoing funding is? I know last month Commissioner Grove said that it would be a payroll tax that would be going into an unemployment insurance trust fund.
That's correct. Eventually, that's the way it works. We're willing to work with the legislature, but the way these work, just like unemployment insurance, we pay in. It's an insurance policy. Folks pay into it. When you need it, you use it. We saw it in a crisis that it worked there. It's the greatest anti-poverty program, maybe next to Social Security, that we have. This would be the same thing. We've seen this, and again, from a fiscal responsibility, businesses, especially profitable businesses, do this because they know in the long run they retain employees, it's cheaper for them in the long run, and their profits end up being higher. So this argument's going to be made, well, this is a payroll tax, and this actually in the long run it saves them from the recruiting, retention of new employees and the turnover. So it will turn into that system. What that looks like, we're willing to work with the legislature to figure it out.
Sorry, just one more clarifying thing on that. So I know that was for the family and paid leave that Commissioner Grove was talking about. Would the same fund exist for the sick and safe leave? Or would it be a different fund with the same structure?
Our budget folks are here, and it's the same structure with a different fund. On safe and sick time is different than the paid family leave fund that would be set up by deed, but it's the same structure.
Governor, when it comes to the classroom aid, I think the 2% was used. Is that 2% on top of what was already set aside last time? And if so, what does that mean in terms of the overall new amount schools would see in this next academic year?
Commissioner Showalter can see this. It's for the remainder of this biennium, the 22-23 biennium, so it would be about half of that. And then it would be for 24-25. I believe the number they gave me is right at $448 million in the 2% on the formula. Is that correct?
And then the teacher money, you said, I think I heard $180 million for teacher training. Is that inclusive of what you guys have already done, or is that above and beyond?
This is above and beyond. This is above and beyond. All the things we're talking about, where you heard Aaron talk about the mental health piece, or Commissioner Mueller, that's all in addition. And I don't know, it kind of went through there. I saw some of the teachers recognize this and kind of eyes light up. We're talking about universal meals for everyone. We're not going to ever shame a kid at the lunchroom again. We're not ever going to make this argument that this is not a necessity to learning. So those are all things in addition to this. And the 2% is on the general ed formula.
One more question following up on the paid family leave. I know Speaker Hortman has suggested that they could put forward $1.7 billion towards covering like 2 years of a state-funded paid family leave program before moving forward with whatever other version. Is that something you're open to?
Well, again, I'm not going to negotiate with myself, but you've all heard me say this from the beginning. I am open to, and the process requires us to work together. Yes, we're open to doing that. We do believe absolutely these things need to be done. This is the way to ensure those families' health, those children's health, as well as their economic health. But the changes to it, if they want to see differences to it, we're absolutely open to that. Our job is to lay down this marker that we've listened to Minnesotans across the state for months. We spent hundreds of hours putting this budget together. I would then, at this point in time, at least take the time to look at it before it's criticized. That kind of aimed at some of my Senate friends over there. I'd test a theory out here, see if it works, that I'm unrolling this on Tuesday. Today is Tuesday, and I'm unrolling it. And I want to see if that takes up a day's worth of argument that it is not Tuesday, because it is my suggestion that it is Tuesday. What we need is some collaboration around this. And on this piece of it, we are open across the board. As long as the principles remain focused, this is about Minnesota families recovering not only from COVID, but building towards the future. It is about Minnesota businesses being heard and saying, these are the things we need you to do.
Now, you said nothing that you're proposing is raising taxes now, but will it in ongoing years?
Paid family leave would be a part of that, and the safe and sick time. There would be a payroll tax that would be to that. I don't think anybody is arguing, though, that say, for example, UI, in the long run, ends up saving us money, saves employees, makes the system work better. So in the long run, the paid family leave. Nothing else we're proposing on this. This is using this, in many cases, for one-time funding. We will have to renegotiate the budget next year. So, for example, the additions on the funding formula will have to be renegotiated in the long term. But we're making sure, being fiscally responsible for a balanced budget. We have had 3 balanced budgets in a row with surpluses, with rainy day funds, and obviously now in this position to be able to recover.
Governor, last week you put out like $4.4 billion worth of direct payments, the checks, the buying off the unemployment debt, et cetera. Can you give a sense as to scope here? Where does this fit in terms of the overall surplus, and are you also including that available federal money? Is that all part of the package?
We are including the federal money. Commissioner Showalter, you want to give any specifics on this as our budget guy? I think that's the answer, though.
Yeah, it is. Governor, Lieutenant Governor, basically, we're talking about $5 billion over the 3-year period. What we're doing really is making sure we're using one-time money to make sure that we have the ability to take these ongoing obligations and be able to pay for them in the future without raising taxes. So that entire architecture will be available, and we'll show that out tomorrow when the Governor and Lieutenant Governor release their entire budget recommendations.
So everything in this package is $5 billion?
I believe that's the right figure? Yeah. 5.1. Okay.
And what comes of that is the federal dollars?
I see a 0.
One more question.
On the meals part, is this going to be all state money, or are we going to leverage some USDA funds that are being left on the table right now?
Commissioner Mule, you want this one or Anna? We are leveraging that video.
So the cost of the universal meals is $187 million in the first biennium and $397 million in the tails 24-25 biennium, and that is all state funds, but there is a sort of a component of the proposal related to leveraging additional federal resources. And then to follow up on the paid family medical leave, that's a 12-week benefit period.
For each part, the family leave and then the sick leave, or collectively?
Let's get more specifics from the Department of Employment and Economic Development on how it works.
We'll have Commissioner Grove. We don't have to go through today.
Governor, I've got to get you on the road. Any final thoughts?
Well, once again, thank yous to all the folks who are here, our educators, our families, especially our students, and to Minnesotans. Our future looks bright. The numbers show that. This is a time of optimism. This is the time to kind of stop the drama. We certainly know that this is about negotiations. It's about making sure we get things right. But when we negotiate around the principle that our children and our families and our long-term future is dependent on getting things that folks across the spectrum know need to be done, this is an opportunity we have not seen before. And so the chance to give Minnesotans the things that we're talking about here at a time when the COVID numbers start to come down makes February look pretty darn good. And it makes the spring looks good. And I think for our children to see us working together to solving problems and an optimism, that's a great gift to give them. So Lieutenant Governor, you close us out.
All right. Well, thank you. And as we're talking about all of these initiatives, I don't want us to lose sight of people. People are at the heart of everything that we are proposing and talking about. And in fact, these are 2-generation proven strategies that address the whole child, the whole family, the whole community, and we know they work. When you increase family income and opportunity, we improve child outcomes, and that is what this all comes down to. I was having a conversation just today with someone who talked about the fact that they were being penalized because their child had COVID and they couldn't take time off of work. What do you do? And so these are the real life situations that folks are faced with today, and we are offering solutions to those things. So today is a really good day for kids and families, but it's an incredible day for Minnesota, and we look forward to working with the legislature to realizing the full potential of every kid at Hilltop and every kid across the state. Get you, thank you so much, everybody.